Okay. You're seeing environmental options at the end of life, right? Nice big okay, and you don't see anything messy behind that. Good. I'm delighted. So we're going to take a look at today at what's available in terms of environmentally sensitive disposition options. Because, I have noticed that so many of us strive to lighten our environmental footprint in life. And and some of us might wonder, like, what can we do legacy wise? How can we continue that when we die? But before we get started, I'd like to begin by acknowledging that I'm here on the traditional and unceded territories of the Coast Salish peoples, the Musqueam, the Tsleil-Waututh, the Squamish First Nations people. They've stewarded this land since time immemorial, and I'm so grateful to be here as a frankly an uninvited guest. And uh, I share this land acknowledgement with you as a step on my own ongoing path of learning about what reconciliation means amidst the ongoing legacy of colonialization here in Canada. If you would like to let me know where you're coming in from, I would love that because, like I said, I did have people signing up from Australia, and Barbara pointed out they might be insomniacs. So if you want to let me know where you're coming from, if you're like BC, can you tell me the town? And if you're from anywhere else, and if you know where you might be, if you know the traditional lands as well, I would love to know that. Campbell River, Barbara's got it for me. I also want to acknowledge that this is a bit of a tender topic, and really, we're talking about what happens when you die, and that can bring things up. And what I'd like to do is just for all of us to commit to being present for one another, however we show up with that. All right. So this is free. And you're stuck with me for the next hour and a half or so. I'm Krista. I'm a funeral director, an embalmer, an end of life educator. I used to be a columnist on CBC Radio, and I help individuals and families and groups and even corporate groups with holistic advanced care planning. I know that I have a really typically Canadian in introduction because I basically were going to tell you a lot about what I'm not, right? I am a bit of a bridge between professions because death care actually touches so many aspects of life. And I came into this profession with the sole intention of revolutionizing it because I don't think we really do it right. But we do so much in death care. We touch so many aspects of people's lives, like legal aspects and financial aspects and things like that. So I need to let you know that I am absolutely not a lawyer, a notary. I'm not an accountant. I'm not even like an event planner. So there's a ton of stuff that I'm not, but I am pretty darn knowledgeable when it comes to end of life and after death care. Uh, if you would think to yourself at any point during this session that you would like to support me so that I can keep doing this, then some of the ways that you can do that are by following me on Instagram. Disapprentice.ca is both my website and my Instagram handle. You might consider pre-planning with me, funeral planning or cemetery planning. You might invite me to come and give a workshop at your workplace. And you know what? You can make your boss pay for that, which I think is a win-win-win. Or you might one day want to take a course with me. I offer a lot of classes. The big one that's happening in September is my holistic advanced care planning class called Prep School. I also do that on one-to-one, and I would love to. I would genuinely love to sort of hook up with you if you would ever like to explore any of that. I'm going to put in the chat my consultation booking, and you can, if you ever feel so moved, you can book a time to just chat with me and connect. All right. Okay. So I'm going to run a couple of polls, right? The first one is how many legal disposition options do we have in Canada? I'm going to just get this started. Launch. All right. Do you see that? Good. Okay. So, and yes, you know how to, yay. Okay. Go through for a minute or so. I can see. Okay. We've 19, 24. Okay. Almost everyone has answered. Okay. So what I'm seeing is that most of you think that there are three legal disposition options in Canada. And you, there we go. Hopefully you can see that. That's correct, actually. In Canada right now, we have only three legal disposition options: cremation, burial, and alkaline hydrolysis, which is water cremation. I'm going to talk about all of those things. We kind of have three and a half, or maybe four. Bit of a trick question. So the folks that answered four are also correct, because we can further subdivide burial into two spots: conventional or green. All right. Now, the second poll that I want to do is to see what you know about how these options impact. All right, so I'm going to open this poll up. I'm going to go back to poll number 2, and I'm going to launch this one. What method of disposition has the lowest environmental impact? Conventional cremation, conventional burial, or donating your body to science? Love it. Okay, you guys are getting it. There's almost all of you figured this one out. 20, 21, 22. Maybe a couple of folks just won't do it. Okay, so I'm going to end it. You guys said that donating your body to science, 68% of you said that donating your body to science has the lowest environmental impact. Okay, you're going to hate me because I'm like that teacher that puts trick questions in the test. That was a trick. Donating your body to science is not a method of disposition. Period. Full stop. I'm going to talk about that more in a minute. The lowest environmental impact, it goes on, there's more tricks. The lowest environmental impact between conventional burial and conventional cremation, almost identical. The whole question was a trick. Do you hate me? I think you're going to love me a little bit more later. Okay, so we're going to go over the two legal options in BC and a few things that you might have heard about, as well as some common misconceptions about disposition options. All right. As an aside, and I'd love for you to pop this in the chat if you could. Do you folks know where we should put our disposition wishes? Whether we've made like formal pre-need arrangements that we've bought and paid for, or maybe if we've just sort of jotted down a few notes. Do you know where you should put that information? Where you should store that information? If anybody has. In our will. Okay. Nicola, there you go. And Barbara with the lawyer, Isabella. Okay, let me tell you a story about putting your disposition wishes in your will and then keeping that will with your lawyer. All right? Don't do that. The first thing is that when you put your disposition wishes in your will, sometimes our wills aren't even read until long after we're dead and perhaps even buried, right? And so if you wanted to be cremated, well, then they're going to have to dig you up, right? And if you wanted to be buried, but they accidentally cremated you, there is nothing that can be done at that point. So don't put it in your will. Barbara actually had the right answer, and I see this too with Jan saying, "Tell our executor." Exactly. You put this wherever you want to, and you talk about it all the time. Maybe even get yourself a dress like this and walk around with skulls just out there in the world. Talk about it because it's kind of useless if you do this work but don't share it with people. The story I was going to tell you about putting it with your lawyer and then putting it with your will and then keeping that with your lawyer. I have actually, in my only few years that I've been doing this work, I've had 3 times real life situations when people thought that their dad's original will was stored with the lawyer. And guess what? The lawyer retired, vanished, gone. Sometimes lawyers sell their practices, but yeah, not always. I've also had a circumstance where someone had their legal documentation stored in their safe deposit box at the bank, and this is wild. This is quite rare. There's two things that can go wrong. One is that you need a death certificate in order to get into that box, and you can't get the death certificate unless you have a copy of the will. So this is like a real hairy pain that becomes quite cyclical. The other thing that is not very good about that, this is, I've only ever heard of this happening once, but it's a real life thing that happened to people that I know. The bank moved and they actually they lost this person's they found it, but it took them 10 days to find it. Now, that was 10 days of looking when they weren't stressed at all because we were actually doing this well in advance. Nobody had died. But imagine adding that stress, right? So these ideas are just so terrific. Legalwills.ca, storing your stuff on an online platform like Nidus, that's all great too. But what I really want to make sure is that you've actually spoken this information to people and that you've maybe emailed copies to them as well. All right. So we're gonna cover today. We're gonna cover a whole bunch of things, but burial, cremation, and then donating the body to science. All right. So I'm gonna deal with this first. This is a huge pet peeve of mine. Donate my body to science as something that I hear as a funeral director. It actually drives me crazy because the thing is that we. First of all, it's not a method of disposition. Do you know what the method of disposition that is associated with whole body scientific donation? Cremation. After your body has been used for 2.5 to 3 years, it will be cremated. Remember, conventional cremation and like flame-based cremation and conventional burial have the same negative environmental impact. So A, it's not a method of disposition. B, you're going to be embalmed to within an inch of your life. I am absolutely not anti-embalming at all. I know that might surprise you because I am a green funeral director. There are many specific circumstances that embalming might make a really big difference. And you can come to one of my disposition seminars if you ever want to learn about that. But the thing is if you're going to have your body used for 3 years, it's going to need to be preserved, right? And so it's going to be preserved by being embalmed. And it's a very aggressive form of embalming because it needs to be used for 3 years. It doesn't just need to sort of stay good until Sunday when the service is. Your body is going to be used for days, weeks, months, in fact, years. And then it will be cremated. So that's the one thing that drives me crazy about whole body scientific donation. I am very pro whole body scientific donation, but people thinking of this as a way to not make decisions about their own after death planning kind of drives me nuts because here's the thing, you can't really do this. It's so hard in BC to donate your body to science after you've actually died. You need to do this work in advance. You need to get accepted into the whole body scientific donation program, which is based at UBC. And then when you die, they need to need your body. And you need to have died in a way that makes sense. So you can't have been hit by a bus, or you can't have had a wasting disease that's made you, weigh 78 pounds now at the end of it, or you can't have clumped up a whole bunch. You need to be quite an ideal specimen, and there needs to be a pretty specific way that you need to die. So it's real. It's a thing. You can do it. But if you do this as your primary number one choice, you must have a number two choice. All right? Make sense? Well, I noticed in that Rose has asked, what happens when you're an organ donor? Organ donation is very different. So whole body scientific donation, they come and pick up your body and take it away. And they do that with usually within 24, but always within 72 hours of the death occurring. And that's it. Your body is gone, and 2.5 or 3 years later, it will be cremated. That's it. With donating your organs, your skin, or your bones, or any of your interior organs, you actually can still do whatever you want. The method of disposition that you choose is totally up to you, and you can still have a full viewing. You can still have any type of service you get to make, or your people who love you get to make all of those choices. All right. So, conventional burial. What's the thing with burial? What gets my knickers in a twist here? Well, you see these pictures in front of you, right? This is actually taken at a local cemetery in Burnaby here. And these are called liners. And in a conventional burial, you're going to need a liner to literally line the grave. So they're going to dig the hole 6 feet or 9 or 12, and then they're going to put one or two of these things in. Concrete, cement, what have you, it has its own environmental issues, but making it, moving it, building it, all of that has knock-on environmental issues. The grounds, notice how like manicured, and so I mean it's obviously been dry here in this picture, but you can see that there's like not a dandelion in sight, right? So we're probably using some pretty effective pesticides at that point. We're going to have heavy machinery that is going to be used to get those darn caskets, those casket liners into the ground. We're going to have no, graves are not being dug. Graves are not being dug. It's all heavy machinery here, and it's difficult to optimize the land use. Now, again, I am a green funeral director, and I am not against cemeteries at all, even conventional cemeteries. I simply am pointing out that there are some fairly significant environmental costs associated with conventional burial. The thing is that cemeteries, be they green or be they conventional, are actually really important to us societally. And so I'm not against conventional cemeteries at all. And I don't want you to sort of take that away from this, but I just want folks to kind of understand what some of the things are. Even the caskets in a conventional burial, you must be in a casket. And that casket might have been made somewhere very, very, very far away and then shipped over. And that has knock-on environmental impacts, right? So there's just a lot that is tricky with conventional burial. And what's interesting is that most people, and in fact, before I moved to this line of work, most people thought that cremation was a lesser impact, has a lesser impact environmentally, and many people actually choose traditional, conventional, flame-based cremation because they believe this. And I think what they're doing is they're conflating the land use with the environmental impact. But that's not the only thing here. So what's up with cremation? First of all, I want us to just look at these. These are called retorts. That's the chamber in which your body is placed. All right. And this is heated here, most places here in BC, by natural gas. And we need to get that up to 1800 degrees for between 3 and 8, or maybe even more, depending on the size of the body and the material of the casket, to 3 to 8 hours at 1800 degrees. That is a lot of gas. And then we've got the smoke, the pollutants that are rising up and out the chimney. Okay. And remember that you might have metals or mercury or silicone, depending. You could have plastics, you could have implants. None of these things are going to be removed from your body, with the exception of a pacemaker, which is usually placed right about here. and it's very simple to remove. And if you don't remove it, you might explode the retort, which would be a heck of a way to go out, right? That would literally be going out with a bang. Um, so that will be removed. Thank you for chuckling at my terrible dad jokes here, but that will be removed, but nothing else will be. If you have, mercury in your fillings, if you're a lady of a certain age like I am, or breast implants, or just metal hips, or screws in your arm from when you broke it, all of that is going to get the byproduct is smoke, my friends. And this just goes up and out the chimney. I'd also like you to look too at the fact that, like, this is actually built, this is concrete pads here, and then I've seen behind these retorts, and it's all like reinforced metal and concrete, and you need to have a very large space and a very specially built space to handle furnaces like this. So the overall impact of flame-based cremation is pretty darn significant. I've seen it stated in ways that folks like me, who are not super scientific folks, can understand it. It's like if you lived in Vancouver and you got in your car and you drove all the way to the Ontario border for every single cremation. And depending on where you live in BC here, and these stats change across Canada and certainly across the world, BC is one of the very highest places in the world, but not the highest in terms of folks who do choose cremation. Depending on where you live in BC, 80 to 94% of people choose cremation. And right now in BC, we only have one option, which is flame-based cremation. So 80 to 94% choose this method. And this method is like for every single death, getting in your car and driving all the way to Ontario, right? It's pretty impactful. 42,000 people died in British Columbia last year. So this is not a drop in the bucket. This is pretty big stuff. These are pretty big decisions. I'd also like to talk to you about the ashes, right? 90% roughly, 80 to 94% of people in BC choose cremation. And of those, I've seen stats that show that up to 65%, so the majority of people who choose cremation want their ashes spread in nature. I think this is just hilarious because what we call cremated remains are ashes, right? We call them ashes, but they are cremated remains. And what does that mean? What are cremated remains? Actually, they are ground up bones. On a chemical level, the flame cremated remains, they're nothing like actual ashes. They're more comparable to like carbonized fossils. They have a similar chemical structure to bleach. They are extremely high in sodium. And if you were to pour your dad's ashes, for example, if you dig a hole in the garden and you poured that in and then planted a rose bush on top, it is probably going to kill the rose bush because it's got a chemical makeup more similar to bleach than to ashes, right? Oh, we've just got someone else popping in. So the other thing is if you bury them without a container around them, they absorb moisture and they're going to turn into kind of like a cement like paste, and they won't decay. They're going to remain like that for decades, and that can actually leach toxins into the surrounding environment as well. They're highly alkaline, like 11.8 pH, which is really similar to bleach, which is around between 11 and 13 pH level. And plants need somewhere around 5.5 to 7 pH level for things to grow, right? So you can see, don't scatter grandma in the rose garden. Not an ideal situation if you want those roses to grow. As an aside, I am not affiliated in any way. I'm not trying to sell you anything here, but there's this wonderful organization called Awake out of Ontario, Awake Ashes out of Ontario. and they have a soil amend a cremated remains amender that you can mix in to the ashes, and then you can plant them in places, and it's really good. It's not very expensive either. So I love awake, but that's sort of the 1-2 punch with cremation. On top of all of the difficulties of the smoke going up the chimney, and how much heat you need, and how much gas you need, and just the overall environmental impact, then you've got ashes to deal with as well. And if you're scattering them in nature, you just not ideal, not ideal, my friend. So here's the thing is that I think that a lot of this is really changing, because the reality is that we've seen this huge rise in what's called direct cremation. That's just pick up the body, go cremate it, no service, no ceremony, no nothing, and then deal with the ashes later. Probably put them in your closet for a very long time, right? And and we have um, this societal unease with death, right? And that's a big part of what has caused this huge uptake in the cremation rates. But as I think there's a few other things that are kind of going into this, and we need to respond by rethinking how we do things. Our society, our Canadian culture in particular, it's become less homogenous, right? And so our ceremonial practices have changed, but the one size fits all approach of traditional funeral homes, it just doesn't fit. And so people reject it. They're just like, nope, I don't want that. That whole beige funeral home thing. Nope, I'm not going to do that. And cemeteries, places that used to be central gathering spaces, kind of the archives of a community, a place for communities to come together and grieve and heal, they're impacted too. You know, here in BC, like I said, between like at minimum 80% of people pick cremation, and 65% of those people then scatter ashes. So there's like 35% of people who are doing something else, which might include a cemetery. Cemeteries are changing too. So what are the options, right? There's a couple of things that I'm going to go through that you might have heard of. Tree pods. Quick show of hands. Who has forwarded me the tree pods on Facebook before? Has anybody done that? Don't, if you do. Um, Tree pods came up out of a company in Italy, and it was very evocative. It was very beautiful. You might have seen the ads for it at some point. The idea was that this cocoon that you see here on the screen was nurtured, implanted so that the body would decay quite quickly, and then a tree would literally grow out of the top of you. Couple of issues here. Look at the position that body is in. I'm a death worker. I deal with dead human bodies. Let me tell you, there is no way you are going to get a body into a fetal position after a death has occurred and then like smush them backwards into this little pot. It's literally not possible. They clearly did not have an actual mortician on their team. This is a concept. It is not an actual thing, but it's a very effective marketing tool. And the company that created this has a lot of it had a lot of investment. And so tree pods, not a thing. People say all the time, oh, I want to be a tree. We'll discuss later how you can actually be a tree. The other one is this mushroom suit. This lady, what I love about this, she actually had a TED talk, not even a TEDx, like a real TED talk about her mushroom suit. And the idea was that she built this suit that she's wearing right now, that you would encase a dead human body in, and all of these little things here. That's essentially mycelium, implanted with mycelium. The only thing I love about this is that it got people talking. I love that people were like, okay, you know what? That's cool. Did you see that lady in the mushroom suit? Have you seen that TED talk? What I don't love is that these suits are probably $10,000 and completely unnecessary. And they have been shown to not actually do what they said they were going to do. They actually retard the decomposition. So, got people talking, but it is not something that we need to do anything else. Um, I would also like to thank Nicola, who has pointed out that human ashes do not dissolve in the ocean's waters. And so this beautiful idea of like scattering the in an ocean, less than ideal. It's like pouring a jug of bleach into the ocean. It happens. I get it. I can't sort of tell you not to do this, but I want to say that absolutely, please don't scatter ashes in a small confined body of water. Small lakes or small bodies, much more impactful. So like they've actually had this situation up like cottage country in Ontario where these very small lakes are everybody's grandpa is going into the very small lake and it's actually really negatively impacting the waters. So think that through, right? Um, all right, so that's not a thing. You've heard of you might have heard of tree pods. Go look it up later if you haven't. If you've seen the TED thing and you've been like, maybe I should get a mushroom suit. Absolutely, don't do it. I have a better plan for you. The other thing, and you might have heard of this, it's out of Sweden, permession. Permession it kind of pops up like the tree pods and the mushroom suits. It kind of pops up like whack-a-mole. And because most people, I'm the only funeral director friend that they have, so they send it to me right away. Did you hear about this? Yes, my friends, I did. Stop sending it to me. And here's the thing with permission. It sounded like such a fun idea. It was this idea that you would get freeze dried and then placed in a sonic bath, essentially, that would pulverize your freeze dried state body, whatever, into a gazillion little pieces that would then be ground up, kind of looking a bit like ashes, and then you could do whatever you wanted with that. Doesn't exist. Never did exist. It never got past the stage of beta testing. They could never figure out a way to actually make it work reliably. Doesn't exist. So don't send it to me. If you get after this, you know how our phones are always listening to us. It'll probably pop up on your Facebook. Don't believe it. Doesn't exist. This, however, does. Natural organic reduction is an amazing option, and it's available in Washington State and a couple of other New York. I think was it Delaware has just so a couple California has just legalized it, but nowhere in Canada. Natural organic reduction is also called human composting. And what it does is it takes the human body and it turns it into about a cubic yard of composted soil. So, and that takes between like 30 and 90 days. It generally costs more than cremation and less than burial. And the thing is you do have the same kind of issue what to do with a cubic yard of remains, right? So you can take the whole thing, or you could just take like a little poinsettia sized bag. We'll talk a little bit more about this later, but natural organic reduction does exist. It does work. It has been commercialized. There are many positives to it. I don't see it as super revolutionary though, because I feel that for the most part, what we're actually doing is really just accelerating the process of green burial. Green burial already does this, and it has a few other benefits as well. So let me see if I can. There we go. So here this, I feel like this might be the future, which is actually kind of in the past, right? Green burial. Everything old is new again. Do you know what they used to call green burial? Burial. Yeah, true story. So green burial has been with us forever. And in fact, in the last few hundred years, when morticians and well, cemeterians really started messing with green burial and inventing these, you know, these liners and things like that, that's just what it was. You dug a hole, you placed the body into the hole. The body would decompose naturally over a relatively short period of time. And so we have kind of circled back to this. And the pictures that I'm going to show you, I'm going to go through the principles of green burial first, but then I'm going to show you a bunch of really beautiful pictures from Salt Spring Island Natural Cemetery, which is a beautiful conservancy cemetery as well. All right. Okay. So here's the thing. Principles associated with green burial: no embalming, direct earth burial, ecological restoration and conservation, communal memorialization, and optimized land use. Those are all the 5 principles, and they're actually quite similar in the US as well. Sorry, I'm having a problem with my mouse here. Sorry about that, friends. Um, they're actually quite similar in the US as well. But I'm going to go through these. No embalming. So this is a different conversation. And again, you can come to one of my disposition seminars if you'd like to learn more. Embalming isn't always bad. There are a number of reasons that we might choose embalming. But if you choose embalming, you cannot have a green burial. Um, Embalming removes the natural liquids in your body and then replaces them with a chemical that will preserve, sanitize, sometimes deodorize the body for a short period of time, not forever. So green burial, you cannot be embalmed. There cannot actually even be surface embalming or anything. You cannot have any embalming. And then direct earth burial is a really neat thing because with direct earth burial, you don't even need a casket, actually. If you do choose a casket, you would choose one that is completely natural. So not even screws, like not even metal screws. It would be all joinery and things like that. You could simply wrap the body in a shroud, is what direct earth burial means. Um, the caskets themselves, like I said, we do have situations where you could actually find yourself picking a casket that came from really far away and wasn't all that green. Do keep in mind that handmade caskets, are made by people who need to buy the material and get paid for their time. So sometimes it can be very surprising for people to learn that these beautiful handmade willow and wicker caskets are uh, every bit as expensive as a mass-produced one that's coming in from a foreign country, right? So what is ecological rest? And I got a great picture of one later. Ecological restoration and conservation. So what this means is that once the green burial has been completed, the surface of the grave is after some time for settling. There'll be some natural settling that occurs. It'll be planted with locally indigenous plant materials using a combination of ground cover, shrubs, trees, maybe. The whole idea of a tree planted directly on each and every grave site, that won't happen. That absolutely will not happen because that would impact the ability to put other bodies in the place. But occasionally, you might even have a tree on top of a body. So these plantings will normally be done to kind of a pre-established planting plan, like creating a green roof, like a natural green roof that will just regenerate and take care of itself after time. And it's going to really impact the greater ecosystem as well. So this is a huge piece of what it means to have a green burial. The communal memorialization, really what this means is minimalizing the headstones. So it's different at Salt Spring Island. I'll actually show you a really pretty picture of a headstone at Salt Spring Island. But in many um, green burial cemeteries across Canada, you'll have only just communal memorialization. There will be like a GPS tag, a GPS location, so you'll always know where your person is. Although the ground can shift a bit, so that that can change a little bit. You'll know where your person is, and then there'll be a wall somewhere in the garden, and on that wall you'll have your little spot with your person named. At Salt Spring Island, I'll show you some pictures. What they do is they use natural products, so natural rocks that's indigenous to Salt Spring Island, and then they have them carved, which is a really beautiful way to do that. And then the last one, optimized land use. What this means is that in a green burial cemetery, there's going to be optimized land use that has design elements that are going to make sure that we can have minimal infrastructure. We're not going to see like a works yard. Go to any conventional cemetery and you'll see a big old works yard where they park all of the diesel, for example, right? Um, but you're going to have minimal infrastructure. You're probably going to have temporary roads. You're going to have things that can be removed and converted. Interment lots can be selected based on various things and optimized so that you can maximize the interment capacity. And typically in a green burial society, what's going to happen is that the reasons for where and how many people we will put will be different from just simply profit. And that is typically the motive at a conventional cemetery. Nicola has said that she prefers natural burial grounds that allow natural markers, native stones, wooden markers, um, and says, I'm kind of rabid about marking where our loved ones are buried. Nicola, I couldn't agree more. Oops, sorry, guys. I couldn't agree more. That's actually a big part of why the team, and I'm sure you know this, why the team at Salt Spring Island has essentially insisted that we have no really unmarked graves, right? So, and I'll show you some pictures of what that looks like. Just briefly, and please do feel free to pop it in the chat. Does that make sense? Are there any questions about those 5 principles or what that means and how that works? I can totally pick it up from the chat if there are. Here is a picture of Nancy, actually. I know this family and I have permission to use all of these families, by the way. Sorry, all of these pictures, by the way. It is beautiful over at Salt Spring Island Natural Cemetery. I think almost all, I mean, I think cemeteries are beautiful, but the green burials, the green cemeteries, oh, just there's something even extra beautiful about them. This is a perfect example of what Nicola was talking about, a natural product. Oh, we've got someone in the waiting room. Um, um, Barbara, can you get that one for me? Yeah, no problem. Sorry, my stupid mouse is being dumb. Otherwise, I could get it. So this is a perfect example of a natural rock that has already existed there, and then it's carved. Now, yes, this could technically be picked up, but it's going to take a bunch of folks to do that. You could also use wood, which will decay over time, but there's some lovely, lovely options. Here's a very recent gravesite at Salt Spring, and you'll see how it's mounded. When you have a conventional burial, you're actually not going to get any mounding. They take the huge, and it's awful. I hate it when people are watching it because it's like bang, 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 bang with a great big digger, like the 3-year-olds love it, but it's not very peaceful, you know, that big digger and smashing it all down. It just kind of drives me crazy. But so what will happen over a relatively short period of time is that this burial mound will settle and it might even dip a little bit eventually. And yes, Stuart, of course, I'm going to send this off to you afterwards. Yeah, I'm so glad you're here, by the way. And Linda has said in traditional burial, families can be buried together. The first deepest. Is the same thing available with green burial? That depends. It's a bit of a yes and no answer. In some green cemeteries, you can do that. And in other green cemeteries, just depending on literally the lay of the land, that may or may not be possible. At Salt Spring Island, they tend to group families together as opposed to having them one on top of the other. But I know that they can do green at Heritage Gardens, which is in Surrey here. I know that they actually can do deeper, essentially on top of the other. And I believe that at a big one, which is over on Vancouver Island, they will also do a double depth as well. So, and Nicola points out that it's always better in the rural spots. Yes, thanks, Nicola. So, okay, so I have a couple more pictures that I want to show you. I just think this is so beautiful, so natural. If you think back to that slide that I had at the beginning with the manicured lawns and whatnot, like this is very evocative, isn't it? It just feels good. Click, click. There we go. Oh, that's another dad joke, the grave situation at Salt Spring Island. See how what we're seeing there is a couple of natural rocks and not natural headstones. So that's a very, and you see that they're actually quite close. This one is a bit of a family plot, if you will. All right. I am absolutely, Marta, going to talk about aquamation, but I'm focusing on what's legal and available right now first, and then I'll get to aquamation. I promise you. Wouldn't be complete if we didn't. That is my beautiful friend Kathy with her casket. Isn't that gorgeous? It's not her casket, but it's made by it's locally made on Salt Spring Island and it's woven, and that is Kathy. If you ever, she will host you and show you around. If cemeterians are really, really cool people, and natural cemeterians are also really, really cool people. And I can make personal introductions to all of these folks. If any of you ever want to either come down to my neck of the woods and go out to Heritage Gardens, or go over to the one on Vancouver Island, or to this beautiful, just reach out to me and I will get you all nicely connected. Okay. So for all those folks who are like, I want to be a tree, this is how you do it. This is how you do it. Not the Italian tree pod kind of situation. Nope, an actual tree. One of the beautiful things about a conservancy cemetery is that the land itself will be protected forever. And people in BC might not know, but there's actually some real difficulties with Douglas firs. People don't know that, but they are a challenged species. And this beautiful acreage actually is a spot that will help Douglas firs in BC forever, in perpetuity. Every time a cemetery spot is bought in either a conventional or a green cemetery, 25% of the money that goes to pay for that land is actually put away in trust by law. The cemeterians cannot access that at all, period, except for trust, for ongoing trust. So that's pretty special. And Steve has asked, what a great question, Steve. Can we do green burial on privately owned agricultural land? Are there permits available to support this in any Western provinces? Steve, what a terrific question. It's also a yes and no answer, much more no, though. You have to become a cemetery. That plot of land has to have attached to it what's called a certificate of public interest. Getting a certificate of public interest is frankly quite difficult and quite costly. It can be done. That's what they did on Salt Spring Island to protect the Douglas firs and to protect that land forever. But it is essentially not doable for just folks like us who want to bury one person in our backyard. Alberta has a little more leeway on this, and how folks sometimes get around this is that you might have private land that's like owned by a church, for example. But again, you're still going to need this specific type of permit. All right. I missed anything there? Yeah, Nicola has popped that. It's expensive, laborious, and time consuming, and I've literally never heard of anyone doing it successfully. Maybe it's happened, but I don't believe so. All right. This, Marta, is why it would be foolish of me to not talk about aquamation, because like I've told you, between 80 and 94% of us choose cremation here in BC. And that's not going to stop. I don't believe. And so let's look at that. All right. I think alkaline hydrolysis and legalizing alkaline hydrolysis will actually revolutionize disposition. And it's a safe, it's a clean, it's an environmentally friendly option for reducing a human body into a pile of bone fragments, which is really very similar to what's left over after a traditional flame cremation. All right. So what happens? This is the, you can see it there. That is the chamber. There's a few different kinds. Okay, this is just a picture of a very specific kind. And then you'll see beside it here, this is a traditional retort. So you can actually have a traditional flame-based retort and a chamber for alkaline hydrolysis in the same place. But what I love is you notice the difference in size, and you'll notice that really all you need is access to sewer and electricity. You could actually put one of these in a garage. Like you don't need to have any of the special building around like you do for the flame-based cremations, right? Here's what happens. Your body is either naked or it is wrapped in a shroud, or it is dressed in beautiful natural fabrics. All right. So my dress, I couldn't wear this because it has some stretch to it, and that's not a natural fabric. So I'd have to wear something else or be shrouded. You will not be casketed. In traditional, many people are surprised to learn this, but in traditional flame-based cremation, your body must be casketed. That casket can be as simple as a cardboard box, but it must be casketed by law here in British Columbia. Okay, so then what happens? Your body is naked or it's shrouded. You've got water and an alkalizing agent, which is usually potassium, and then a little bit of heat, which will happen naturally. It will be a natural chemical reaction when the water and the potassium mix, and then it is just kept at a relatively warm temperature. Um, the tissues on your body, everything on your body, is dissolved, and what is left behind are the skeletal remains and any non-organic material. So this is another reason that I just love alkaline hydrolysis so much, because your breast implants and your mercury fillings and the things that are inside your knees and stuff like that, all of those are just separated out, and they're actually so clean afterwards. They could be reused as is. Like they're you can just pick them out of the bottom, and then all that's ground up is your skeletal remains, and those are ground up just like the ashes that we get from flame-based cremation, right? So it takes about the same amount of time, probably between 3 and 12 hours, depending on the size of the body and the size of the machine, et cetera, et cetera. Um, and you're left with a similar product. You still get the ashes. It's currently legal in 4 provinces and 1 territory. And in the States, we've got 22 states. I think actually it might be 23 now, states that are currently using this as a legal, viable method for disposition, for human disposition. Something that surprises a lot of folks is that currently this is actually legal in British Columbia for pets and for livestock. So it is being used here in British Columbia. It is just not being used for people. And it drives me crazy because, you know, I am a huge supporter of green burial. Can't say enough great about green burial, but it can't be our only choice for a greener disposition method. I don't think that's reasonable. I love that the choice exists, but we have an option for cremation as well. Why can't we do this? Well, typically, I think the answer is that there is no politician out there who is willing to get up and stand up and say, I want to talk about death, my friends. Can you imagine? That literally would be the kiss of death for that for that politician. He's not going to get elected talking about death as one of his main platform planks. So there's not a lot of impetus, and there's folks even here on today's Zoom who have been working really hard trying to bump this up and get this noticed. But you know how we're going to get this legalized, in my opinion, is that if every single one of you and all the people who registered but are going to be watching on recording, hi, all of you, I want you to go to aquamationbc.ca, and I'll send you information afterwards. Don't worry. Sign the petition and write personal letters to the people who are named on that website. We need our Solicitor General to hear us saying this. We need the head of the BC Funeral Association to hear us as consumers asking for this. Okay? You do that for me? You love me? Yes? Okay, good. Thank you. So, I'm going to pause there for a second. Please do feel free. Alkaline hydrolysis, like I know it like the back of my hand, but it's quite a new concept for a lot of folks. So does anybody have any questions about the process itself? And you can either unmute or pop it in the chat. Oh, I see a whole bunch I missed. Family burial. Rose, do bodies get embalmed before traditional cremation? Bodies can get embalmed before traditional cremation. Unlike green burial, where you absolutely cannot cremate the, you cannot bury a embalmed body in a green burial cemetery. You can cremate a body that has been embalmed, and you can alkaline hydrolysis a body that has been embalmed. Again, the reason that we might choose embalming sometimes is if there was a very significantly traumatic death and we wanted to have or a very sudden death. People didn't have a chance to see their person. That's a really great example of when we might want to choose embalming. And with alkaline hydrolysis, you could choose that and then still have so you'd be making a choice, a little bit not green here, a little bit more green here, right? But that's how life goes. We often have that kind of those kinds of decisions to make. We have a family burial plot on our part of the Lytton Band land. Have you heard of natural burial sites on native land? Yes, I have. And typically it's, so there will also be a certificate of public interest essentially that's associated with that, Linda, but some of them might be so old that they are grandfathered in, or I hate that term, but you know what I mean. And there are circumstances where they cannot be used anymore. So sometimes they're historical, but not ongoing. But yeah, you can always book a call and we can talk more about that if you would like. Do bodies get involved? Who is the government minister to write to about alkaline hydrolysis? I'll send that out for you, okay, love? And then that way everybody will have it. But it is the minister of who oversees the Solicitor General. This is for me. My hip transplants can be reused. Yeah, you know what? They are so clean afterwards. Rose, everyone I talk to is interested in this. Not sure why it would be a political suicide. Yeah, Stuart. So here's my point with that. I talk to a lot of people about this too. And regular people are like, yes, hallelujah, let's get to this. I talk to politicians just like you talk to politicians, and they are just like not interested, not interested, not interested. And they will often say, "Oh, I'm not hearing about this. Nobody's really told me. It's not a big demand." And so they're hiding behind this lack of societal knowledge to avoid kicking this can, reaching down and picking up this can, and and actually getting down to it. I think that when we really do have to talk about death and dying to talk about this, and I do think that a lot of politicians would feel quite awkward about people coming at them. Why do you want to talk about this? Oh my God, he's so black. There's bigger problems. Da, 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 da. So I really do. I kind of stand by what I said. Politicians are an interesting sort. Direct link to the alkaline hydrolysis petition. Nicola, you're my favorite. Thank you, Isabella. Gotta go. Okay. What remains would a family get from alkaline hydrolysis? Linda, it is just like the ashes that you get from a flame-based cremation. After the process is over, you separate out the hip transplants and things like that, and then you put the bones in a big cremulator, and they get ground up really small, and they get given back to the family. You typically will get about 30% more, and they will be lighter. Rose agrees with Stuart. Yay, Stuart, you have a new friend. What is the energy consumption for alkaline hydrolysis based versus flame-based cremation? So it's very, very, very low. The energy that's required is very low, but here's the one downside is that we will have some water usage. So the flame-based cremation will use the amount of energy that a family will typically use. A family of 4 will typically use in 1 week over 7 days. That's flame-based cremation. For an alkaline hydrolysis, it is almost none, like way less than 1 person for a day. But the water usage is about how much 1 person would use over 3 days typically. So there's about that much water that is required. It is still a net positive. Energy consumption. Yeah, Lauren is also in, Stuart, Lauren is also in opposition. So that's great, but let's see if he's still interested once he's in there. But yes, I'm delighted, Stuart. I know how much work you've been doing on this, and I think it's so hugely important. Bones only after aquamation, soft tissue dissolved and flushed. Yes, it actually will just go down the municipal drain and into a municipal treatment, a water treatment. There is byproduct with water cremation. It's water. There is byproduct with flame cremation. It's smoke. The water is enhanced. It has no RNA or DNA in it, but it does have it does actually help and support our sewage systems. So it's pretty amazing. The ground bones, we actually don't have enough studies on this. That we don't know. They may be less toxic for spreading, but they may not be. So I can't answer that one. Nicola's giving us pictures of what, thank you, Nicola, of what you look like. And Rose, my next slide is all about cost. So you're reading my mind. Thank you for that. And yes, the liquid is beneficial, Nicola. Okay, good. Well, then I will go on to talking about money. And what I'd really like to do is I would like to make sure that people understand that we need to compare apples to apples when we talk about cost for disposition. I'm going to start with green burial. Okay. Green burial is more expensive than traditional flame-based cremation. But it's not just disposition. Flame-based cremation is just disposition. You still have to deal with ceremony, and you still have to deal with, or may choose to deal with, memorialization. Green burial takes all of that and packages it up together. And so you've got the disposition, you're going to the burial. That is the act of disposition. The ceremony will be right there at the burial site. And the memorialization, it's a permanent memorialization. Whether you're choosing cremation, water, or flame-based, you're just choosing disposition. And decisions still need to be made about ceremony and about memorialization. And so if you went and had a big party at the golf club, for example, and then you went and got a park bench in a park for 10 years, then you could easily pay what it costs to conduct a green burial. Okay. Green burial, you're buying the plot of land and it is yours. You have the right to interment forever. So it is a permanent purchase, right? That cost will vary wildly. There is a cemetery on I think it's the Denman Island Cemetery that is local and only for Denman Island residents, and it's in the low hundreds when you buy that plot of land, but it's only for Denman Island residents. One of the least expensive options for green burial here in BC that's open to anyone. Bye, Stuart. That's open to anyone is at Salt Spring Island, and it's roughly $4,500 for the plot. And then there's opening and closing fees, and then you need to deal with actually getting your body there and all that kind of stuff. So two separate things. Roughly, we say around the $10,000 mark once we're all done. A cremation, flame-based cremation, will cost you in most parts of British Columbia around the $3,000 mark. In Vancouver, we have this weird race to the bottom situation that's going on, where big companies are essentially trying to push out smaller independent players. How can I say this? Cheaper isn't always better, right? In life, you're going to make choices all through your life about things like shopping at farmers markets instead of Walmart. And you might pay a little bit more at your butcher because you're supporting an independent realtor, right? And the same can be true when we're making choices about disposition. Sometimes the really big players can drastically undercut the smaller players, and that eventually results in less choice for everyone. So I am a huge believer in getting to know your local funeral provider and getting to know what they're doing and what they're paying their staff, and and what their practices are and things like that. But here in the Lower Mainland, we probably would range for a direct cremation from anywhere from about $1,000 to about $6,000 for the exact same product, right? In most parts of BC, a direct cremation is going to cost you somewhere around the $3,000 mark. And when you are doing a burial, it's going to really depend on how much the plot of land costs. All right, green burial at what's it called? Heritage Gardens, beautiful spot out here in Surrey. It's about $7,500 for the plot, and over on the island, it's about I think it's about 8,500 or something around there. We're looking at 4,500 on Salt Spring Island and a few hundred on Denman Island, right? So huge, huge, huge variability. So if you're serious about saving money, and I'm Ukrainian, so me and my baba, we are definitely very serious about this. This is like a core value for me. Then I'd actually like to give you a little plug for pre-arranging and prepaying for your funeral services because, well, frankly, if you live in BC, I can help you with this. And if you live in other parts of Canada, I can totally hook you up with someone who can help you with this. But the benefits of pre-arranging are just so big that I need to run through it with you because the first one is that it protects your assets. The cost is dealt with and the cost doesn't go up. If you die today, I guarantee you that you're going to pay less for any services today than you will pay in 20 years. And funeral costs roughly double. That's according to the National Funeral Directors Association every 10 years, right? But if you pay today, you can live for 10, 20, 30, 40, as many years as you want. And your costs are guaranteed. And people tend to think that there's like two decisions that need to be made, which is like cremation or burial. That's what people think. Okay, well, whatever. My family will just have to figure out cremation or burial. But actually, there's about 87,452 other decisions that need to be made. And making them when you are fit and able and healthy and not stressed and not in the midst of a major grief event, that's just smart, right? None of us should make decisions at a time like that. So that's my plug for why pre-arranging can make so much sense. And Barbara, what if I've prepaid for cremation but I've changed my mind? Well, there's a couple of things. The safest way to you will either have prepaid via insurance or via a trust, probably insurance. And the safest way to protect that money is to not go and renegotiate that contract, but to simply have it paid out to your estate at the time of death. So you'll get it all back, right? If you rearrange, then they're reopening the contract. There is a fee for that, et cetera, et cetera. So I would we can talk offline, but there's ways to protect your investment, right? For sure. So in Williams Lake, we only have one funeral provider, so choice is not an option, and they do not offer prepayment, and it's a tad frustrating. Nicola, this is the second time I've heard about funeral homes that don't offer pre-arranging. In almost all parts of Canada, this is a major part of business. And yet there's a few like really old school folks who are like, nope. So I'm sorry, Nicola, but I know I can't tempt you to come and move in with me, but I would if I could. Yes, okay. So I have one more poll for you. Okay, this is a sneaky little poll. Let me just go over here to my polls. If alkaline hydrolysis were legalized, how should we brand it? All right. So I just have to go back here. Okay. One last spa day, returning to the river of life, or let's just call it alkaline hydrolysis and sound smart. Oh, I thought one last spa day would get more. Let's see, I've got a few more coming in. Maybe some of you have stepped away. Oh, 21. Good, good, good. Oh. Okay. Okay. I really thought only 3 of you wanted one last spa day, my friends. Here you go. Most of you just wanted to call it alkaline hydrolysis and sound smart. You, oh, Rose, my love, I was, you're right. I would actually never do that. It is flippant. However, I must say that in the work that I do, sometimes I just need to laugh a little bit. And the thought of one more bath, one more hot, like cozy, that's like my happy place. So I honestly figured that would catch on. Um, and awareness and support for this mandate will only grow as baby boomers age out. I think you're right, and you know what? I have so much hope in my beautiful baby boomer friends. I'm a Gen Xer, and so I'm like the translator between the boomers and the millennials. And I believe so firmly that the boomers have changed everything as they touch it. As they move through something, they're like, "Hey, we're going to do this different." And I think that will happen as well for aging and death. And so I have a lot of hope in my boomer friends really leading this charge. And one of the ways that you're going to be able to do it is by advocating for things like more choice, alkaline hydrolysis, things like putting your money where your mouth is when you say that you want to leave a positive environmental impact. Well, support a local green cemetery. There are many ways to do that. Boomers rule. Yes, yes, Rose. They genuinely do. They rule pretty much everything. so um so yeah, I would just love to kind of invite you to share this when I send it out. If you say, "Hey, I just spent an hour and a bit with a crazy lady from Vancouver who was talking all about green burial and alkaline hydrolysis and one last spa day. You should really have a listen." I would just love you to talk about, be me, be that weird person who goes to the dinner party and talks about death and dying. That big, I'm super techie today, and I would just like to say that this big thing here is, where is it? Trying to get it there, this thing here, that if you take a picture, that it'll take you to my Calendly link, and it will actually make it such that you can go directly to booking an appointment with me to chat and to spend a few minutes with me. Hi, now I'm back in there. I'm going to completely turn it over for the last 15 minutes now, so that, oh, sorry guys, just have to, there. Oh, didn't lose you. Okay, good. Whew. Sorry about that. Completely turn it over to you for this last 15 minutes. I cannot believe that so many of you who said that you were going to show up actually showed up and spent this gorgeous day with me. You can absolutely kind of disappear off into the day, but I would love to know if you have any specific questions that I can help you with. There's so many of you that I've got you on two screens, so you're either going to have to just unmute and speak up, pop it in the chat, or put your little hand up, okay? And there is, of course, the possibility that I answered everything. Okay, great. Rod, can you unmute and then go for it?
Hi, I'm wondering about a green burial in just a shroud. It seems to me that that would be difficult for the survivors that lower
Mm.
just a bag basically with a body in it. It just seems almost a little too personal, and I was just wondering how acceptable that is to most people.
That's just a beautiful. So this is what I meant at the beginning when I said, this is something that it's a sensitive topic, right? Um, and it lands differently for different people. You know what? Believe it, I'm a super green funeral director. I don't like the idea of being buried, period, in a casket or a shroud, right? I'm actually way more comfy with. I just It's just a thing. It's just the way I am. I love it for other people, but I'm like, ugh, not for me. The shroud is truly it is very confronting. I will acknowledge that. It's absolutely beautiful, but you know that you are seeing a dead human body wrapped in a bag. Um, it might not be for everyone. Some people find that connection incredibly powerful. I have attended so many services that have been like just stunningly beautiful, with people carrying their own person. and then like lowering by hand rather than with machines. It is very, very personal, extremely intimate. But in a green burial, if you were really interested in a green burial, but just like the shroud is going to keep that's a no go for me. A wicker basket, a pine box that doesn't have nails, that has joinery, all of that is an option as well. And by the way, with the shroud, generally there's a board underneath the shroud if we're going to be carrying anyone a distance. Because just think of it, right? A body would be kind of like a hammock shape, really. Otherwise, so it can be just stunningly beautiful. But I do get it. You're right. It's an intimate thing. So, and my friend Kat has a question. Just unmute. Oh, where'd she go?
Hi,
Hi.
thank you. Thank you for this. This is just lovely. So I am a death doula, and I am actually located kind of in the middle of like two wonderful green burial locations. And my
Lucky.
husband and I both are going to do a green burial, and we're deciding the location. And my question is, cemeteries memorialization is kind of more about the ones we leave behind. And so, how do you decide a location, hoping that it's going to be important to your children, but they really aren't at the place where they want to talk about that? So, how do you
Mhm.
decide a location? Because
Mhm.
it really wouldn't matter. It's just the idea of the green burial that we want.
Yes. Well, I mean, you can start with that. We've chosen green burial because of this, and the memorialization is a bonus as opposed to something that, like, for some people, that's very, very integral to why they make that choice. The memorialization is like mixed right in there. For you, it's not. So that's great. Just acknowledge that. That's the first step. The second step is that your children might not be at a place that they're able to talk about or kind of willing to engage with it now. Um, but they will appreciate your choice, period, full stop. When you make a decision and then there it is later, it is one less thing that they need to think about. And that is the gift of pre-planning. Whether you're just making your plans and actually like pre-planning and pre-paying, that's terrific. But even if you're just pre-planning and it's like, here, kids, this is what needs to happen, it is such a gift. And whether they want to go to this spot or that spot, whether they visit that frequently, like most of my family isn't buried. I have one auntie that's buried. And my God, she's my stand-in for all the family. Every time I need a minute, I just go to go see my auntie where she is out in Burnaby. I don't even like the cemetery. It's a big corporately owned cemetery, and I don't even particularly like the spot that she's in or whatever. And I just love having that spot. So you're right. It's for the people that are left behind, and it's never going to be perfect because you're going to be dead, and they probably don't want you to be dead. And but it's there. So it's probably I often just say to folks, don't overthink it. Is that okay? Yeah? Okay. All right. I've got a lovely one from Pamela in the chat that says, we would like to know how to get from Nanu's to Salt Spring after death. So your funeral director, and this can also be prearranged, by the way, but your funeral director will look after that. There are two sides of a cemetery burial. One is the burial at the cemetery, and the other is tending your body. The funeral director, the funeral home looks after tending your body, or your family does if you're like a total back to the land or all natural. Like Nicola is not going to hire a funeral director unless she hires me, but some of it, or Emily. But usually it would be a funeral director and a funeral home that engages in that piece of it, and they simply transport you from one to the from one place to the other place. And then once you're there, like all of your body will have been taken, it'll be shrouded, it'll be casketed, it'll be dressed, it'll be whatever. And then the burial takes place at the cemetery. So it's super easy. And then just depending on the amount of distance, um, you know, will impact the cost, right? So if someone's coming from Bella Bella to Salt Spring, there's going to be a bigger transportation cost. And if someone's coming from Galliano to Salt Spring, there's going to be a smaller transportation cost. All right. Okay, my friends. Who else? Oh, yes, Jan.
Hi, thank you very much, Krista. I very much enjoyed this.
You're
My
so
question,
welcome.
my question is, I believe there is a form that can be completed. I'm hoping that by the time I go, my family will be comfortable actually moving my body. I
Yeah.
have a plot in the Royal Oak Cemetery that my great grandmother
Mm.
purchased, bless her, and they allow green burials.
Yes.
So I'm hoping to do pre-arrangements. You might hear from me.
Yeah.
And but I'd like my son and daughter to transport me.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
there's a form, I
That
believe, that needs
yes,
to
there
be
is.
completed.
There
Yeah.
is. And this is a wonderful thing to like as part of the sort of prearranging is really understanding the technicalities. Like if we don't know how to do that, if we don't know what happens when you die, and then we're all of a sudden trying to learn all that at the time, like it's a big hairy hassle, as I like to say, right? But actually it's not that difficult at all. We go through the consumer protection in British Columbia. The thing is and there's a form. The thing is there is some complexity because we can't know most of the time. Most of us don't know when and how we die. And so if you die 10 minutes after 4 on the Friday of a long weekend and consumer protection is not open until Tuesday morning, that actually, it might at that point make a lot of sense to contact a funeral home and say, this was my wish, but I'm not going to be able to get this form right now. Also, by the way, there's nothing wrong with keeping your body like safe at home and cool for several days. But I'm saying like, what if you were hit by a bus or something like that, right? So yeah, absolutely. And learning about like the disposition options and the practicalities, that's stuff that I do with folks too. You can book me for an hour or something like that and we could go through all of that, no trouble at all. My friend Pamela has asked another question. Do we arrange this in advance with Yates in Parkville? My request, actually, yes, you could, but it would also be enormously beneficial to me if you arranged it with Earth's Option and me in on Vancouver Island, and I could sort out all of that for you. So head back to slide number 1 there. That was like, how can you support the Apprentice? That would be one way. If you don't wish to, though, and the folks at Yates are amazing, by the way. So yes, absolutely, reach out to the folks at Yates, and they can hook you up too. All right. Although I'm not sure if yeah, yeah. So I don't know that they specialize or have a lot of information about green options. So there you have it. 3 minutes left. Is there anyone else? Well, I cannot thank you. And how about we unmute just so that we can be together for a moment? I cannot thank you enough for spending this time with me. It's like so beautiful. Here's my window that's going to open later. Um, just having you here with me for this hour and a half to learn with me. You know that I can talk about this way too much. I'm going to send you the recording a little bit later. It usually takes a bit of time to buffer, and I've got a little resource sheet for you as well that you can share with your friends, that you can pour over or tuck under your pillow, that kind of thing. Please do know that I'm here anytime. Rose, I appreciate you too. That I'm here anytime. I am also here if folks don't plan and something sudden comes up. Please, if that ever happens to you, don't make decisions in that state of grief without having a friendly face, right? And I work with people all over British Columbia in time of need, and just as a someone to bounce things off of. Not That's not a paid situation at all. That's just a what happens now. please remember that I am in your back pocket for that kind of thing too. All right. Oh, and Nicola missed some of it, but you can see the recording. That's so great. Well, my loves, thank you for spending this time with me. I can just, so much joy. And I hope that I will see you soon on Instagram or in real life or at
Thanks, Krista.
Mountain View Cemetery.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, my love.
Thank you.
You.
All the
It's
best.
so lovely.
I will go leave.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Krista.
Oh, you're so welcome, Karen. Bye.
Take care.
You too. Oh, I love Wendy's picture there. Well, Barbara, thank you for coming. Did you learn anything?
Of course.
That's so
I
great.
learned lots.
Thank you for
yeah.
being my co-host. I super
Yeah.
appreciate that. It just
Yeah,
makes
well,
it so
thank you
much
for
easier.
asking me. And yeah,
You're so
there's so
welcome.
much to learn, and it's such, yeah, I love talking about it, and I love hearing about it. So
Yes, I'm the
talk to
same
you
way.
soon.
Okay, bye, love.
Bye.
All right, friends, I'm going to end this now. Reach out if you need anything at all. Bye.